I still remember that night like it was yesterday. The bass from cheap speakers thumped through the crowded frat house, red cups littered every surface, and the thick autumn air carried traces of pumpkin spice mixed with stale beer. I wasn't even planning to be there. My roommate Dave practically dragged me out, insisting I needed a break from my engineering assignments. That's when I saw her. Eliza stood in the kitchen, gesturing animatedly as she told a story to a small crowd. Her auburn hair caught the light just right, and her laugh carried over the music. Something about her drew me in immediately. Not just her beauty, though she was stunning, but the way she commanded attention without demanding it. I nursed my drink for 20 minutes before working up the courage to talk to her. She was reaching for the drink mixer when I offered to help, fumbling through some cheesy line about being good at calculating proportions thanks to my major. Instead of rolling her eyes, she laughed. Really laughed, not that polite chuckle people give to bad jokes. Her green eyes crinkled at the corners when she asked if I'd put those skills to the test and make her something special. We ended up talking until sunrise on the back porch, long after most people had stumbled home or passed out. She was studying education, passionate about making a difference in kids' lives. The way she spoke about her dreams, with such conviction and enthusiasm, captivated me completely. Our first real date was at this tiny Italian place off campus. I wore a tie that didn't match my shirt, and she had a spot of marinara sauce on her blouse all evening, but didn't care. We shared tiramisus and talked about everything, our families, our hopes, our fears. With Eliza, conversation just flowed naturally. She brought out a side of me I didn't know existed, made me less serious, more spontaneous. Those 3 years of dating were like something out of a movie. We'd take random road trips on weekends, singing badly to 90s hits. She'd help me proofread my technical reports, and I'd quiz her on educational theory. Even our fights were perfect, short-lived, and always ending with both of us apologizing, usually over ice cream at midnight. The proposal wasn't elaborate, but it was us. I took her back to that Italian restaurant where we had our first date. The ring wasn't huge, I was still paying off student loans, but when I got down on one knee, her eyes welled up before I could even finish asking the question. She tackled me with a hug right there between tables, both of us laughing as nearby diners applauded. Our wedding was perfect in its imperfection. Her veil caught on a rose bush during photos, I stumbled over my vows, and the best man forgot the rings in his other pants. But Eliza just laughed through it all, squeezing my hand, her joy infectious. Looking at her that day, radiant in white, I felt like the luckiest man alive. We danced to it last while our families watched, and I remember thinking, this was it. This was my forever. Those early years of marriage were everything I'd dreamed of. We got our first apartment, a cramped one-bedroom where the hot water never worked right, but it was ours. We'd spend Sundays doing crosswords in bed, arguing playfully over obscure words. When Julie came along, followed by Ethan, our love only grew stronger. Eliza was a natural mother, balancing her growing career with family life in a way that amazed me. Watching her read bedtime stories to our kids, or feeling her curl up against me during movie nights, those moments felt eternal. Like we'd somehow cracked the code to lasting happiness. I believed, with every fiber of my being, that what we had was unshakable, that our foundation was built on something stronger than just attraction or convenience. We were partners, best friends, soulmates. The memory of that barbecue still feels like a splinter under my skin. It was mid-July, one of those perfect summer evenings where the air hung sweet with the smell of grilled meat and fresh-cut grass. Our neighbors, the Wilsons, had hosted the gathering in their backyard. String lights twinkled overhead as the sun dipped below the horizon. I stood by the grill, beer in hand, chatting with Mike Wilson about work, when Sarah, his wife, corralled everyone into a circle of lawn chairs. The wine had been flowing freely all evening, and Eliza's cheeks were flushed pink as she settled next to me, her shoulder brushing against mine. "Let's play a game!" Sarah announced, her voice carrying that slight edge of mischief that comes with a few glasses of rosé. "Celebrity Hall Pass! Who would yours be?" The group erupted in laughter and eager chatter. I shifted uncomfortably in my seat. Never one for these types of discussions. Even in jest, the idea of discussing potential infidelity made my stomach turn. "Oh, I know exactly who mine would be." Eliza leaned forward, wine sloshing dangerously in her glass. "Riker Shaw." My jaw clenched involuntarily. The soap opera heartthrob's name hung in the air as the women squealed in agreement. Eliza launched into an animated description of his smoldering eyes and perfect jawline, while I took a long pull from my beer. "What about you, Xander?" Sarah pressed, and all eyes turned to me. "I don't really think about that stuff," I mumbled, forcing a smile that felt more like a grimace. "Oh, come on. Everyone has one." Eliza playfully nudged my ribs. "Don't be such a stick in the mud." I named some random actress just to move the conversation along, but watching Eliza's animated gestures as she continued gushing about Riker Shaw made something cold settle in my chest. Later that night, after we'd put the kids to bed, Eliza was more passionate than usual. Her kisses were hungry, urgent. Between breaths, she whispered, "I was thinking about my hall pass." I froze for a split second, but she didn't notice. She was lost in her fantasy, and I was lost in my thoughts, wondering if I should feel as bothered as I did. It was just a game, after all, but something about the way she'd said his name, the gleam in her eye when she talked about him, it felt different, more real than a simple celebrity crush should be. After she drifted off to sleep beside me, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The evening replayed in my mind. Her enthusiasm, her detailed knowledge of his career, the way she'd defended him when someone mentioned a bad review of his latest show. It was probably nothing, just harmless fun fueled by wine and summer heat. But that splinter of doubt had worked its way under my skin, and no amount of rational thinking seemed able to dislodge it. I hadn't expected to run into Dane after all these years. The neon beer signs cast a familiar glow across his face as he slid onto the bar stool next to me at Murphy's. Time hadn't been kind to him. His hairline had retreated further, and deep lines creased the corners of his eyes. But that sardonic half-smile remained unchanged. "Xander, man, it's been, 3 years?" We fell into easy conversation, catching up over whiskey sours. Dane had switched careers after his divorce, now tending bar at a place across town. The mention of his failed marriage hung in the air between us. "Remember those neighborhood barbecues? Sarah and I used to host them before. Well, you know." I nodded, memories of those summer evenings flooding back. Good times. Whatever happened to everyone? The whole group kind of scattered. Dane's expression darkened as he took a long pull from his drink. "Want the rundown? Mike and Jenny split 2 years ago. Tom and Rachel lasted maybe 6 months after we lost touch. Even Mark and Lisa called it quits last spring. Seriously? They seemed such a solid couple." "Yeah, well..." He traced his finger through the condensation on his glass. "You remember that stupid Celebrity Hall Pass game we used to play?" The mention of it made my stomach twist. "Sure. Harmless fun, right?" Oh, Dane let out a harsh laugh. "Harmless? That game was like relationship poison. Jenny started following her hall pass on social media, got obsessed. Rachel actually flew out to LA trying to meet hers at some fan convention, and Lisa, she straight up told Mark she'd leave him if she ever got the chance with her pick." My chest tightened. Come on, it was just a game. That's what we all thought, but it plants this seed, this what if that just grows and grows. Pretty soon you're lying in bed wondering if your partner's thinking about someone else, if they're settling for you. Oh, I took another sip, trying to steady my nerves. Oh, sounds like as relationships had deeper issues. Maybe, or maybe putting that possibility out there just makes people realize they've got an exit strategy, an excuse to check out. He signaled the bartender for another round. How's Eliza doing, by the way? Still crushing on, what's his name, that action movie guy? The whiskey turned sour in my mouth. Riker Shaw. And no, that was ages ago. Right. Riker Shaw. Dane's knowing look made me want to punch him. Just keep your eyes open, man. That's all I'm saying. I wanted to tell him he was wrong. That Eliza and I were different. Stronger than that. But I couldn't shake the memory of her face lighting up at Riker's name. The way she'd watch his movies with such intensity, the subtle changes in her behavior whenever he came up in conversation. Thanks for the warning, I said finally, dropping some cash on the bar. But I trust my wife. Dane just shrugged, that same sad half-smile playing across his face. We all did, buddy. We all did. I was settling in for a quiet evening at home while Eliza attended her education conference in Los Angeles. The kids were at my parents' for the weekend, giving me rare alone time. I'd just finished microwaving leftover lasagna when my phone lit up with Eliza's name. Hey, honey, how's the conference? Music thumped in the background, mixed with the buzz of voices. Not exactly the professional setting I'd expected. Her response came through gobbled and high-pitched. Baby? Oh my God, I can't, this is insane. She broke into giggles, her words slurring together. I met him. He's here. Met who? Are you okay? You sound pretty drunk. Riker! Riker Shaw! He's at this amazing club we went to after the conference. Some of us got VIP access, and he was just there, looking even better in person. My stomach dropped. The fork in my hand clattered against the plate. And get this, she continued, her voice rising with excitement. He's been talking to me all night. He keeps buying me drinks, said I'm the most beautiful woman he's seen in ages. Eliza, you need to get back to your hotel. You're drunk. No, you don't understand. This is fate. Remember the game? My hall pass? Well, he wants me to come back to his place and I'm using it. He's so into me, Xander. This is my chance. The room spun. Blood rushed in my ears as my wife's drunken words sank in. Eliza, stop. Think about what you're saying. Come on. This isn't... The line went dead. I stared at my phone in shock before immediately calling back straight to voicemail. I typed out message after message. Please call me back. Where are you? Don't do this. Think about our family. Let me know you're safe. Nothing. Just those mocking delivery receipts showing she wasn't even looking at her phone. Hours crawled by as I paced our living room, alternating between rage, despair, and desperate hope that this was all some terrible misunderstanding. But her words kept echoing in my head, slurred with drunk excitement about another man. I called her hotel. No answer in her room. Called some of her co-workers I had numbers for. No one picked up at this hour. My messages went unanswered as midnight came and went. The lasagna sat cold and forgotten on the coffee table while I remained frozen in this nightmare, waiting for my phone to ring. I paced my living room floor all night, checking my phone every few minutes. No response from Eliza. By morning, my stomach was in knots. I needed answers, and I knew exactly who might have them. I called Milo, my hand shaking as I hit record on my phone before dialing. He picked up on the second ring. "Hey man, you got a minute? I need a huge favor." "Sure, what's up?" "Can you call Fiona? I need to know what happened with Eliza last night. She's not answering her phone." There was a pause on the line. "Yeah, give me a sec." I heard the muffled sounds of Milo dialing Fiona on another phone. My heart pounded as I listened to their conversation. Hey, Fi, how's the conference? Listen, Xander's worried about Eliza. Have you seen her?" Fiona's voice came through, hesitant and strained. "Oh God, I was hoping you wouldn't find out like this." My blood ran cold. "What happened?" Milo pressed. "We were all at this club, and Rikashaw was there. Eliza completely lost it when she saw him. She kept saying how this was her chance, her hall pass moment. He was flirting with her all night." I gripped the phone tighter, my knuckles white. "And?" Milo prompted. "She left with him around midnight. She was hanging on his arm, telling everyone she was living out her dream. I tried to stop her, Milo. I really did." I ended the recording, my hand trembling. The confirmation of my fears hit me like a physical blow. I mumbled a thanks to Milo and hung up. The next hours were torture. I called in sick to work. There was no way I could focus. I drove the kids to my parents' house, making up some excuse about Eliza and me needing to deal with a house emergency. The worry in my mother's eyes told me she knew something was wrong, but she didn't press. Back home, I alternated between rage and despair. I checked my phone obsessively, but Eliza's phone remained off. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her walking away with him, the man she'd swooned over countless times while watching his show. The man whose poster she'd kept hidden away in her desk drawer. The man who was now with my wife. Hours crawled by. Each tick of the clock echoed through our empty house, mocking me. I tried to eat, but couldn't keep anything down. The same questions kept spinning through my mind. How could she do this? Was our marriage not enough? Was I not enough? The sun set and rose again. Still no word from Eliza. 24 hours of silence. 24 hours of imagining the worst. 24 hours of my world crumbling around me. I heard the front door open and close, followed by the familiar sound of Eliza's heels clicking against our hardwood floor. My stomach twisted as she breezed into the living room, her face glowing with a radiance that made my blood run cold.
The conference was incredible. You wouldn't believe the networking opportunities. She dropped her bags by the couch, acting like this was just another business trip.
I stood there, frozen, as she rattled on about keynote speakers and workshops. Each cheerful word felt like a knife twisting deeper into my chest. Dark circles ringed my eyes from 2 sleepless nights, but she didn't even notice. "And how was your night at the club?" My voice came out harder than I'd ever heard it. "Oh, that?" Her eyes lit up, and my world crumbled further. Can you believe I actually met Riker? It was like fate or something. What happened after your phone call? Well, she perched on the arm of the couch, practically bouncing. We went back to his place. God, Xander. He was everything I imagined and more. Such a gentleman, but so passionate. I crossed the room in 3 strides and grabbed her left hand. The diamond ring I'd saved for months to buy glinted mockingly in the afternoon light. With trembling fingers, I yanked it off. "How dare you wear this?" "Well, I couldn't even finish the sentence." "Oh, come on, don't be so dramatic." She rolled her eyes. "It was my hall pass. We literally all agreed to this. You're acting like I committed some horrible crime. We're married, Eliza. We have children. This wasn't some game. You cheated. It's not cheating if it's your hall pass. Those were the rules. He stood up, crossing her arms. God, I knew you'd make this all about you. You're being completely unreasonable.
I stared at this stranger wearing my wife's face. The woman who'd held my hand through my father's funeral, who'd whispered promises of forever under starlit skies, was gone. In her place stood someone I didn't recognize, someone who could destroy 15 years of marriage and smile about it.
I'm sleeping in the guest room. I pocketed her ring and turned away. Seriously? You're gonna punish me for living out a fantasy? One that you agreed to? She laughed. Actually laughed. I didn't realize you were this insecure. I climbed the stairs without responding, each step heavy with the weight of her betrayal. Behind me, she called out about me being dramatic, about how I was blowing this out of proportion. I shut the guest room door on her words, cutting off her voice, but not the echo of her casual cruelty. As I sat on the unfamiliar bed, I pulled out my phone. My marriage might be in shambles, but I wasn't going to let her walk away from this unscathed. For the first time in our relationship, I felt the cold satisfaction of planning my retaliation. I spent most of the morning in a daze, wandering our house like a ghost. Every room held memories that now felt tainted. The family photos on the walls mocked me, snapshots of happiness that might have been lies all along. I needed proof, not just for myself, but for whatever came next. Standing in front of our bedroom door, my hand trembled on the knob. I'd avoided this space since that night, sleeping in the guest room instead. The master bedroom still smelled like her perfume. My stomach turned as I pushed open the door to her walk-in closet. I started with her suitcase from the LA trip, still unpacked in the corner. Nothing unusual, just clothes and toiletries. Her dresser drawers revealed nothing either, but as I moved deeper into the closet, something caught my eye behind a stack of shoeboxes. A manila envelope, partially hidden. Inside was a glossy 8x10 photo of Riker Shaw, clearly professional headshot quality. The sight of his smug face made my blood boil. Then I saw the silver Sharpie scrawl across the bottom. To my unforgettable friend, Eliza. My hands shook as I turned the photo over. There, in the same metallic ink, was an even more explicit message. You were great in bed, Riker. The room spun. I stumbled to my desk and fired up the scanner, needing a digital copy before Eliza could destroy the evidence. As the machine hummed, reality crashed over me in waves. This wasn't just a drunken mistake. The photo proved it was premeditated. She'd gone to LA planning to meet him, planning to... I couldn't finish the thought. The scan completed, and I carefully returned the photo exactly where I'd found it. Standing in that closet, surrounded by her things, I felt like I was suffocating. 15 years of marriage, and this was what it had come to, searching for proof of my wife's infidelity like some private investigator. That I had what I needed now. Whatever happened next, I had concrete evidence of her betrayal. The weight of the wedding ring in my pocket seemed to grow heavier with each passing moment. I sat in Ivy Sampson's office, gripping the photo of Eliza and Riker in my trembling hands. The modern office space with its minimalist decor matched Ivy's reputation, sleek, sharp, and no nonsense. "Tell me everything," Ivy commanded, her steely gray eyes fixed on me from across her glass desk. I laid out the whole story, the whole past game, the phone call from LA, the evidence I'd found. Ivy listened without interruption, only the occasional nod or raised eyebrow betraying her thoughts. "First thing, don't confront her yet. We need more ammunition." Ivy pulled out a legal pad. "Give me access to your shared accounts, cloud storage, everything. My team will dig deep while keeping it quiet." My stomach churned at the thought of more revelations, but I complied. Over the next few days, Ivy's tech specialist worked through Eliza's digital footprint. Each new discovery felt like another knife in my back. A week later, Ivy called me back to her office. We found something interesting. She spread several photos across her desk. They showed Eliza at some upscale club, draped over a man who looked exactly like Riker Shaw. The resemblance was uncanny. Same chiseled jaw, same perfectly styled dark hair. "Here's the kicker," Ivy said, sliding forward a document. "This isn't Riker Shaw. Meet Derek Manning, professional celebrity impersonator. He specializes in, let's call it fulfilling fantasies for wealthy women." The room spun. I gripped the edge of Ivy's desk. "What?" My investigator tracked him down. He runs this scam in multiple cities, approaches women who are clearly Riker Shaw fans, plays up the resemblance. Sometimes he even hints that he's Riker, trying to stay incognito. Gets them drunk, takes them back to expensive hotel rooms. Classic predator. I stared at the photos again. The man's similarity to Riker was remarkable. But now that I knew what to look for, I could spot subtle differences. His eyes weren't quite right. The smile was close, but not exact. So she didn't even... I couldn't finish the sentence. Have sleep with the real Riker Shaw? No, she fell for a con man's trick. Ivy's voice held no sympathy, but the intent was there. The betrayal was real, and now we have everything we need to make sure you come out of this divorce with your assets protected. My heart ached, not just from the betrayal, but from the sheer stupidity of it all. 15 years of marriage thrown away for a fake version of a celebrity crush. Ivy was right. Whether it was the real Riker or not didn't matter. Eliza had made her choice. I took the day off work to be home when the papers were served. Ivy had recommended a particularly efficient process server who would handle everything professionally. Around noon, my phone buzzed with a text confirming the deed was done. Later that evening, headlights swept across our driveway. The front door slammed open with such force that the family photos rattled on the walls. Eliza stormed in, her face flushed red, makeup slightly smeared. Her designer blazer was wrinkled, hair disheveled, a far cry from her usual polished appearance. "How dare you?" She threw her purse onto the kitchen counter. "You had me served?" "At work, in front of everyone." I remained seated at the dining room table, hands folded calmly. The past few days of preparation with Ivy had steeled me for this moment. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Her voice cracked. The whole school was watching. My reputation, 15 years of marriage, and you pulled this stunt? You did this to yourself, Eliza. Harmless fling. That's all it was. She paced the kitchen, gesturing wildly. We even agreed to have hall pass. But no, you have to blow everything up. What about the kids? Have you even thought about them? I've thought about nothing else. This is ridiculous. You're destroying our family over it. I met her gaze steadily, refusing to rise to her bait. The woman before me was a stranger, someone who could casually dismiss betraying our marriage vows as a mere mistake. You're not even going to defend yourself? She grabbed her phone, fingers flying over the screen. Fine. I'm telling everyone what you're doing, that you're making up lies about me, that you've lost your mind and are throwing away our marriage over nothing. Her thumbs jabbed at her phone as she typed furiously. I could already imagine the stream of messages she was sending, spinning her version of events to whoever would listen. Go ahead, I said quietly. It won't change what happened. She looked up from her phone, mascara starting to run. I hate you, she spat. You're pathetic, you know that? A real man would fight for his marriage. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. A real wife wouldn't have cheated. Eliza's face contorted with rage. She snatched up her purse and stormed toward the door. "This isn't over," she called over her shoulder. "You'll regret this." The door slammed again, leaving me alone in the sudden silence. I sank back into my chair, exhausted but resolved. Let her tell whatever story she wanted. The truth would come out eventually. The courtroom had an eerie stillness to it. I'd never felt so many eyes on me, on us, before. Eliza was sitting just to my left, her head held high, like she was above it all, like she didn't have a care in the world about what was happening. That was her default these days, defiance with a layer of smugness painted right on top. When she took the stand, her tone dripped confidence. She played her devoted wife, role to perfection, casting herself as the victim, somehow wronged in a mess of her own making. Fiona, of course, backed her up. Why wouldn't she? They'd been thick as thieves when it mattered. It was always Eliza and Fiona at the PTA meetings or planning school events together. Now Fiona was giving some over-rehearsed testimony defending Eliza's character, swearing up and down Eliza had never left the club with that man. Just a night of drinks and innocent fun. That's all it was, she claimed. I couldn't bring myself to look at Eliza while they both spun their web of lies. There was still an ache inside me, a twisting knot of disbelief that, even now, after everything, she'd choose deception over just owning up to the damage she caused. I should have expected it, but you always want to believe you know someone better than that. Better than this. Then Ivy's turn came, and like always, she didn't waste any time. Without saying a word, she paced in front of the jury, wearing her power like a second skin. Cool, calm, and lethal. Everyone knew she was about to shred through Eliza's story word by word. First, she played the recording. Fiona's voice echoed through the courtroom, shaky but clear, spilling every detail about Eliza leaving with Rikershaw. The silence in the room felt thick, almost suffocating. Fiona dropped her gaze, pretending to adjust her sleeves, but the damage was done. Ivy turned her attention to the jury, letting them marinate in the truth before launching into the next bit. Then came the photos. There they were, displayed on screens for everyone to see. Eliza smiling, draped on the arm of that man, the look-alike, Connor Hale. He looked every bit the part of Riker Shaw, but now we all knew better. Eliza's face flushed. She shifted uncomfortably, her confident posture starting to crack under the weight of the undeniable reality in front of her. I think that's when she started realizing this wasn't going to go her way. But Ivy wasn't done. No, she was just getting started. She took her time revealing that final piece, the big twist. Connor Hale, whose real name we hadn't known until then, was a fraud. Ivy read through a list of his aliases, detailing his history as a professional impersonator and con artist. There was documentation of Hale hustling women all over the country, using that same guise, leveraging his eerie resemblance to Riker Shaw to worm his way into their lives, into their beds. I heard a few gasps from the jury. Hell, even I felt something break inside me again. Not that it was surprise. It was more like this bitter confirmation pouring right into my chest. She threw us away for a fake. And, as if Ivy hadn't hammered enough nails into Eliza's defense, she revealed one last gut-wrenching blow. Connor had a pocket full of STDs and a long trail of reckless behavior. Ivy, with her always precise and almost surgical delivery, pointed out the health risks Eliza had likely brought home to me. It felt like the courtroom itself exhaled with shock, the tension draining out of everyone, except from Eliza. Her face had gone pale, For the first time, she looked genuinely shaken. She crossed her arms over her chest, nervous fingers tapping her elbows. Her tells. I had to fight the urge to laugh at the absurdity. This had gone from ridiculous to tragic so fast I could barely process it. I wasn't sure if I was angrier that she had cheated, or that she was so unbelievably gullible. I didn't care about him being Riker anymore. The delusion was almost worse than the act itself. The judge didn't need long after that. He delivered the ruling with a no-nonsense tone. Our prenup held, and her attempt to paint me as the controlling, jealous husband, it didn't stick. His final words pinned the responsibility squarely where it belonged. On Eliza, and her betrayal. I watched her crumble behind stiff shoulders, trying to maintain some illusion of grace as she gathered up her papers, eyes glazed over. It was like she didn't even see me sitting there. She was clenching and unclenching her hands, trying to project control, but everyone could see it. Her carefully sculpted facade had cracked open, revealing the mess underneath. Court adjourned, and I stayed in my seat for a moment, watching her. I should have felt more relief, maybe even felt victorious. But as the bailiff ushered us out, weaving through the aisle, it hit me how hollow it all was. This wasn't some cathartic win. I was walking away as broken as I'd been when I stepped into this place. All those years together, just shattered like glass, and I had nothing to show for it except the legal paperwork signaling the end. And the worst wasn't even in here, not by a long shot. Because when those courtroom doors swung open, the chaos waiting on the other side hit like a tornado. Reporters, microphones, cameras, the whole world waiting to feast on whatever scraps they could. Ivy had mentioned some press interest, but nothing like this. Eliza just froze, mid-step, caught off guard by the throng of shouting voices, all screaming for her attention, asking her about sleeping with the real Riker Shaw. Except now they all knew it wasn't him. The swarm pressed forward, circling, closing in too quickly. Eliza's expressions shifted rapidly, her polished demeanor cracking under the pressure. She started shoving through the journalists, her arms flailing as more questions were hurled at her. Knives in the form of words. Panic set in, painted right across her face. "Say something for your husband," one reporter shouted into her ear. "Did you really cheat for a Riker double?" Another voice cut in. Eliza snapped. One moment she was brushing them off, and the next she lunged for a reporter's microphone, ripping it from her hands. The woman stumbled back, and before I could process it, Eliza was screaming. Loud, messy, nothing coherent, just rage pouring out like a dam had broken. People were pulling out phones, catching every second of her meltdown as she knocked one of the reporters to the ground. The crowd parting in shock. Security stepped in quick, but not quick enough to avoid more damage. The deputy, didn't even see where he came from, had her down on the pavement within seconds, taser out. Eliza twitched once, then slumped. The scene wasn't something I could easily forget. Every camera in that court square had caught it, slicing her downfall into bites and pixels for the world to see. By the time they hauled her away, I was already in the background, fading out of sight as quickly as I could. It was a strange feeling, walking back into the house I used to live in as a married man. Eliza's mother's place hadn't changed. Same beige walls, same overstuffed floral couch, same framed family photos that had gathered dust in the corners over the years. Only this time, the photo of Eliza and me at our wedding wasn't staring at me from the mantel, mocking me with that picture-perfect smile. Her mom must have taken it down after everything blew up. Good. At least someone saw the writing on the wall. Eliza sat on the edge of the couch, her foot tapping in a nervous rhythm. Her auburn hair was tied back in a messy knot, and the bags under her eyes told me she hadn't slept well. Maybe not for weeks. I might have felt some sympathy before all this, but that part of me that would have reached out to her died the night she called me from L.A., drunk and giddy over some two-bit actor. She didn't speak at first, just kept fiddling with her wedding band. Well, what had been our wedding band. She'd been wearing it again ever since the court ruling. I knew what it meant. It was her way of clinging to something she'd already broken, like by wearing it, by broadcasting to anyone who asked that she was still Mrs. Bennet. Somehow she could undo the mess she'd caused. "I'm sorry." Her voice cracked, finally breaking the silence that had been suffocating the room. "I just stayed where I was, leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed. I wasn't here to make her feel better. Not this time." She kept going, though. Words started spilling like a broken faucet as she wrung her hands. She said she regretted everything, told me how she didn't even know he was an impersonator until after the fact, and that she wouldn't have done it if she'd known. She called herself stupid, naive, manipulated. It didn't matter. I stood there listening because it was polite to listen, but inside, none of it hit me. Not her tears, not the way her throat caught when she mentioned fixing this. She wasn't crying for me. Hell, she wasn't even crying for Ethan or Julie. She was crying for herself, lamenting her own mistakes. That hollow kind of regret, where you're more upset at losing than at the actual betrayal. "I didn't mean for it to end our marriage," she choked out between sobs, looking up at me with those green eyes that used to pull me in so easily. "I was stupid. I thought it was a joke, a stupid game." She was stumbling now, scrambling for any way to make herself the victim in all of this, the one that made a silly little mistake. "Xander, please, we can fix this. Go back to—" That's when I finally said something, grounding the mess of her words. "No, we can't." I stared straight at her, feeling nothing, really. Just a tired kind of emptiness that had taken root over the months since divorce papers were filed. "You threw away our marriage for a fake celebrity. I hope it was worth it, because it cost you everything." My voice didn't waver. I'd rehearsed saying it so many times in my head, it rolled off my tongue like it was something mechanical now, impersonal. That was easier, to let it just be words rather than letting any of the pain seep through again. I wasn't going to give her that. She blinked, and for a moment, it seemed like it took a second for the realization to sink in. Her lip trembled, and she started shaking her head, almost as if she didn't hear me right. "I'm serious, Eliza." This time, I pushed off the doorframe, standing up straighter, as if that made what I was saying feel even more real. "It's over. I don't care about the fact that he wasn't the real Riker. You didn't destroy us because you were tricked. You destroyed us the moment you walked out of that club with him." Her body seemed to deflate. She sank back into the couch, pressing a hand to her forehead as though it would stop her from spiraling. I couldn't count how many times she'd tried to explain it away since our lives flipped upside down. Every phone call, every attempt to run into me accidentally when I picked up or dropped off the kids, each word she spewed had the same empty core. This time wasn't any different. Her tears had no impact on me anymore. She was trapped in her own regret, her selfish, short-sighted regret for what her life had become, not for what she'd done. "I'm sorry," she whispered again, but this time it sounded even smaller, less desperate, as if she knew she'd lost. "I know you are." I turned for the door, and her sobbing became a background noise, like static I'd been immune to after all these months of dealing with her apologies and explanations. I reached for the knob and didn't hesitate. It wasn't a dramatic moment or some cathartic release, just final. The door closing behind me felt like the last chain snapping away from a dead weight. As I walked to the car, it dawned on me that the hardest part was already behind me. And it wasn't walking out on Eliza. That had been set in motion the second she made her choice with Derek Manning, or hell, even before that. The hardest part had been watching us fall apart in real time. It'd been the long nights, the few remaining sleepless hours where I'd caught myself thinking maybe there really was something left to salvage. Before reality came back with a vengeance, it had been realizing that trust, once shattered like ours, could never be rebuilt. By the time I slid into the driver's seat and pulled out onto the street, a weird sense of quiet settled over me. Not comfort, not relief, but something that felt close to clarity. Maybe Dane had been right after all, the stupid celebrity hall pass game. It's funny how something so small planted the first thread of doubt, unraveling everything. It wasn't just about Eliza's actions. It was about realizing I'd been walking in her daydream life this whole time. That she, with all her hustle and ambition, had always been wanting something else. Something more exciting than our Friday movie nights, family dinners, or lazy Sundays. Now I was done chasing those fantasies. Julie and Ethan came first. They were what mattered, not these endless games and lies. I owed them that much. Hell, I owed it to myself at this point. I wouldn't let them grow up thinking love and loyalty were just words people said to get what they wanted. I hadn't raised them to believe in illusions. It was time for something new, something real. The road stretched out ahead. Finally, my own again. Hey everyone, if you enjoyed the story, remember to like, subscribe, and comment on the video for more stories like this. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss an update. If you have any similar stories to share, leave them in the comments and we'll make sure to bring them to life. Thanks for watching.